Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Growing Your Marketing Team with Minimal Budget, Maximizing Internship, Volunteer, and Student Work Opportunities. I'm Jarell Jenkins, Local Arts Services Coordinator with Americans for the Arts, and we've got a great program planned today. And I'm so excited to get started, but first, some quick reminders. ArtsU is our e-learning platform offering a variety of training options to support your work in the field. Visit artsu.americansforthearts.org to view upcoming events. Please note that this presentation is being recorded. The recording will be available in about 24 to 48 hours on the event page. So everyone who's registered for today's meeting will receive an email when the recording is ready. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. You can either type your questions in the chat box, and to open the chat box, please press the chat function in the navigation bar at the bottom of your screen. You can also unmute yourself to ask a question, and always feel free to go to the Participants tab and click the Raise Hand function. You can do this by clicking the unmute button microphone icon in the bottom left corner of the meeting window. And with that, I'm so pleased to introduce our speaker today, Jill Jacobs. Jill serves as the marketing manager for the Western Carolina University Bardo Arts Center outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Jill is responsible for leading all marketing efforts of the Arts Center, including all strategic planning, branding, design, social media, partnerships, paid advertising, community engagement, and sponsorships. And I'll now turn it over to you, Jill. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jarell. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a program that is really dedicated to talking about working with those student workers, those interns, those volunteers, and really activating them. What I found is that a tendency of working with this group of people is not really looking at them as a part-time employee, which a true part-time employee, you tend to look at a little bit differently. And so when you really think about them as a true member of your staff, and I like to think about them as auxiliary staff members, you wind up thinking about tasks and responsibilities for them that are not so much just busy work to keep them occupied, to sort of keep them out of your way, which sometimes is necessary, but most of the time, it's a waste of time for you and it's a waste of time for those students. It's much better to be able to give them tasks that give them skills and beneficial resources that they can grow for the future, but at the same time, have really fantastic opportunities to make the marketing and the work that you do reach a lot more people, because you're actually utilizing those students to do a lot of the work that you just don't have the time to do. And so the learning objectives for this is going to be how to mobilize this unpaid student workforce to act as extensions of your marketing office, and also the guidelines. You really have to train them. You have to give them confines to stay within, to not let them just go rogue. But if you can give them some really good things to work off of, you can get some fantastic work out of them. And then the last thing I'm going to give you as a part of this experience is an actual takeaway list of items that you might already be doing with your students. And if you're not, this is a great thing to be able to do. And then as an added bonus, I don't know how many of you are dealing with trying to keep student workers working during the current situation right now, which is, of course, a crazy situation for all of us, and our university has given us permission to have students that would have normally had an on-site job work remotely, so we can still give them opportunities to make that money that they would have been paid. And so I have a list of those opportunities that we're working on as well, which hopefully can be beneficial for any of you that are looking for this type of stuff, for your volunteers, your workers, your interns, whoever that might be. So without further ado, let's get started. So one of the places I really like using our students, and I'm just going to keep Casey up on the screen because he's adorable, is through social media. So we talked about the menial tasks that we might need them to do, and that can be useful. But I'd say what's far more useful is really having them do something that can be beneficial. And so one of the types of things we look at is social media. Now, of course, on the college campus, social media is everything, especially Instagram is where most of our students are, and it's our best place to reach them. And so I have a few different ways that I have students engage on social media. So first of all, I have what I like to call the liking task force. And what will happen is when a major post goes out, something that we really want to get a lot of traction on right away, I'll send a group me message. And if you don't know what group me is, it's like a WhatsApp app where you can just have groups of people that you can talk to It's free, it's not tied to text messaging rates, it doesn't have crazy notifications that are really obnoxious. So my students prefer it for these kind of mass communications. I do too. And so I'll send out a mass communication pretty much saying, post just went up, please go like, comment, share it, do anything with it you can to help engagement. Most of the time they're just gonna like it, but that flurry of activity right when you put up an important post feeds the algorithm on both Facebook and Instagram and really helps your post get seen by a lot more people. Now, another thing to keep in mind though, is that on Instagram, I'm gonna go to another page right now. On Instagram, it works slightly differently. So Instagram, yes, enjoys when people engage with your platform, but Instagram far more enjoys when you engage with other people's platforms. That's really the way that you start increasing your reach and getting a lot more people not only seeing it, but for the algorithm to want to show your own posts is actually based upon the way that you are interacting and engaging with other channels. So what I have my students do, I have a whole team of students, there's about 7 of them. And what I'll have them do is go onto a much used channel. So here, this is our WCU Catamounts channel, this is our sports channel. And this is a weird time to be doing this because posts are a little strange right now and not everything is so positive and able to be engaged with and interacted with. But I did find this one where it says one shining moment and it's talking about some great things that just happened for our basketball team. And so this is the type of place where my students would know that they could go onto this post and as Bardo Art Center, they'd write something like, this is great, congrats. Or they would respond to this other student's post and say, we can't wait for the next season either. Make sure to check out the marching band when you go, or the part of our drum corps that's there. Make sure to check them out. So they're given the tools they need to understand the types of language they want to use, but they actually go and they comment on lots of channels. They'll go to a location tag, and anyone who's publicly tagged something to the location tag or to a hashtag, like our Western Carolina University hashtag, they'll go and they'll like those posts, they'll comment on those posts, they'll engage on those posts. And so not only does that help us create that interaction with the algorithm, but it also has us interacting with all of these different people as Bardo Art Center. Now they have some rules, the language they need to use, what they can say, what they can't say, and most importantly, where they find these posts. So you don't want them to just go to their friend's wall as Bardo Art Center and start commenting and liking on that person's post. It's a little creepy. What we want to do is we want to find the place where these posts are being put publicly. So those are location tags, hashtags, major comments on other people's channels. Those are the places where my students go, and they do this fairly often. And actually over this past year, we saw a huge increase. At the beginning of the year, when we really started doing this on a really frequent basis, we had about a little over 1,000 followers, which was like pulling teeth for so long to get, even on a campus with a lot more people than that. But we started doing this engagement, and over this past semester, we've added over 400 people, and it was all organic. It wasn't any contest or anything like that. This was just us trying to use the algorithm in the best way we can, and almost every day watching new students follow our channels. So again, this is a really easy way to activate your students, get them to be a part of it. They know how social media works better than we do half the time. So keep that in mind. Give them things that feel meaningful. Another place I use students all the time, and this is actually my student who graduated last year, who I absolutely love, and my other students are doing a great job, but his stuff was always the best. But you really use them as influencers. So we have arts ambassadors, that's what we call them. And really they're just my students who have a fancy title and they engage with other students. They post themselves and they say, hey, look where I am, what I'm doing, or they take a picture of what's going on. We started the hashtag Find Art Everywhere WCU a while back. And so pretty much anytime there's just art happening on campus, we can hashtag that. And the stories are widespread. I rarely put anything up on the stories, and we almost always have a story up right now, or story up at any time. And the stories are completely student driven. They're given kind of a series of different things that they could be looking at. So whether that's sheer art content, like I was talking about, whether it's marketing for an event that's coming up, them standing next to a poster or a sandwich board sign that we might have out, them actually in an exhibition talking to other students about a piece of artwork or something like that. So it is a wide variety of things that these students are able to talk about and put on our channels. And since Bardo Art Center is both a fine art museum and a performance space, and we also work with the Belcher College of Fine and Performing Arts, which is a school of music, school of stage and screen, and school of art and design, we do have a good amount of content that we can find. There's almost always students painting or chalking or having their drum pads out and they're standing around the fountain. So a lot of that stuff is just really fun content. And that's the thing that populates a lot of what we have up there. And then the rest is usually specific to events and exhibitions. Now, a great tool I wanted to show you, and actually right now, if you were to go to our Instagram channel, you would see it on the story. It's not as easy to actually show you the stories on here. Instagram is weird and it doesn't like to show you the stories. But what I'll show you here is the platform called Canva. I'm sure most people are familiar with Canva. It's free, which is awesome. But Canva has a stories feature. And so this is a student of mine named Emily, who's gone in and who's created different really attractive stories that then once you download them, you can put them into the app and add animations to them. So if you go to our Instagram page, I'm fairly certain maybe on Facebook it will allow us to play. I can get back to that later if we want to try and see it. But these are handmade, they're templates. She's just dragging and dropping, and she's studying graphic design. So this is a really good benefit for her as well, because she gets to have all sorts of things that she gets to put in her own portfolio of the work that she's been doing. And so these are the types of ways that I really try to make my students feel like, A, the work that they're doing is really meaningful and important and helps the organization. And also, even more importantly, isn't busy work. It's something that helps them and they come up with more ideas of different things that we could be doing. So those are some of the ways on social media that I really have these students are activated. They are extensions of the marketing staff. And even more than just doing stories and doing things like that and liking and commenting and engaging, I have other students that write posts and schedule those posts. And so as an example, this is a document sorry for the crazy screen changes, but this is a document that one of my students was working on for the exhibition you just saw, Curious Terrain, W&C from the Air. And what you see here is the series of images that she has attached to 3A, 4A. Those are attached to actual images in a OneDrive document. And then she'll go through and she'll flesh out the language that she wants to flesh out. I go through, I edit all of that language. I give her a time and a date that I want her to schedule it. And then she goes into Hootsuite and she schedules it for Instagram. And I actually have her go in and schedule them natively to Facebook, because I truly think that when the posts are scheduled on Facebook, they do better than Hootsuite pushing them out there, than a third-party service. But again, she does this for me. And now they're not doing this for everything. Usually these are package deals. So I'll give a student an exhibition. I'll give them a performance where they'll need to go and find reviews and videos and cool, engaging types of content that we can use. But again, I have them do this, and then I have them do all of that scheduling. And again, this takes time. One of the last things we're going to talk about is training, because that's, to me, one of the most important things you can be doing with these students. And yeah, so social media, engage them, have them do fun stuff. And also, I talk to the students a lot of times about what channels they think we should be using. Interestingly enough, a few years back, Snapchat was like the thing, right? Everyone wanted Snapchat. So we started a Snapchat, and it was kind of a thing. My student Casey was known as Snapchat guy around campus. The university wound up stealing him. He was on the main marketing channel doing all this stuff. And then Snapchat just honestly kind of died for like a public facing event marketing style platform. It's really a person-to-person connection. And when you talk to students and you ask them, do you look to Snapchat for events? Your answer is almost always going to be no. And the thing that all of my students want us to explore now is TikTok. And just to give you some interesting numbers, Snapchat was at 260 million last year, went down to 210 million this year. So they've dropped a lot. TikTok has only been launched to 2016. Snapchat was 2011, keep this in mind. Since 2016, they have over 500 million followers. So there is some merit to that channel, and I'm gonna explore it when we get back from all this craziness, because every single one of my students has asked me to. That will be something they will run, but we will explore that because it is something that you have to keep up to date with, especially if you're trying to reach students. You need to know what are the things that they're looking for. So moving beyond social media, some of the other places that I really activate students are through kind of community calendar submissions and helping us get just a much larger reach from our programs. So coming back over here, this is a listing of community calendars in our area, and this is actually major magazines and publications around here that just happen to have a nice, easy event submission opportunity for us. And so what this is it's pretty much just like a Facebook event submission. This event will go onto their calendar online, but a lot of times too, if they have space in print, you'll wind up seeing your events in print. Didn't pay for them, didn't do anything. All you did is have a student go here and submit this information. And this is the same information that we have on our web pages. So if my student was going to go to the Curious Terrain webpage, and as you can see, I'm a huge fan of short codes, they could go here and they could pull all the information they need. They could pull the title, the exhibition date, an image, the description, and they just go and they put that all online for me. And so that is one of my favorite ways to have these students do this work. It's super easy. And for most of them, they've done stuff like this before. This isn't a brand new thing for them. They've all created a Facebook event, and so they all can do this too. Another thing that I love having my students help me with is create targeted reaches. So that is having them go and search on different channels and find me people that we can email and send more information to. So as you see here, not only do we of course have our news stations, but galleries and art centers, music teachers, performing arts centers. This is an even more expanded list of some other places, all of the arts organizations in our region. And we then take that, and we also have the schools contact list. There's also the whole, pretty much every K through 12 educator in our region, we have pulled their email down. And what my student, Karina, who is a professional writing student, who is a freshman, who started working with me this year, who is my everything right now. I'm obsessed with her. She is so talented, and she's an incredible writer. And so I finally had a student where I could say, this is what I want to have happen. I want to create a reach email for this exhibition. And I want you to find all of the faculty members on campus that you think, like let's brainstorm. It's an exhibition about the environment and human impact. So what are some of the other biology? Can we reach out to biology? Can we reach out to the human sciences division? Can we reach out to any places where we construction management, anything where we can really find a cool tie into the exhibition? She'll pull all of those contact information and she'll reach out. She does the same thing for our K through 12 programs, like I was talking about. I actually have an example of one of those emails. And I want to be clear that these are not mass emails. These are individual personalized emails. They're really not personalized. I say personalized, but it's a copy and paste of a message that is good for everybody, but it feels personal because it's not going into a BCC, it's not coming from an eBlast communication platform. It's coming from my student who lists herself as a marketing assistant because that is what she is to me. She doesn't need to say that she's a student worker. She's 18 years old, and if she didn't decide to go to college and I had a part-time job for her, she could fill it. And so those are the types of things that I always try to remember and let them do this work. I said, please create me an email. She sent it to me. It was pretty much perfect. I think I tweaked it slightly, but she started sending these to me. She was CCing me on all of them. But when I say she was sending this to like 600, 700 people, she was. And so I told her she didn't have to CC me anymore because I trusted her. But from those reaches that she sent out, which teachers are some of the hardest people to reach, we went from only having about 100 people signed up for a free educational concert that was happening on campus. And we know that the buses are the biggest deal for people to get there. But she sent out these communications. And lo and behold, we had over 600 students come to that program. And then the next program that was in there, the John Brown Jazz Band, we had over 400 students come to that. So it was also really great for her because I get to show her, look at what you did by sending out this email, this thing that I would never in a million years have time to do, but you did it. And look how valuable it was to the marketing and to this reach. And because it was for kids, she was extra excited that she was able to be a part of that. So again, it's about inspiring them, activating them, making them feel important, and giving them work that's actually meaningful. And again, I know that's not always going to be possible. There are times when you need them to organize something or you need them to stuff envelopes and things like that. That's totally fine. But for the majority of their time, try to give them things that are kind of fall into one of two categories, I feel. It's either what are the things I want to do, I know I need to do, but I don't really have time for and can delegate those out? And then what are those things that I've never even considered having the time to do that could be an amazing boon for the organization. And so those are kind of the two boxes that I try to go into. And generally it winds up being in that second box, those things that like I would never find time to email 600 educators about this one free show. It's not revenue generating, it's not a main focus, it's an auxiliary thing we do, but it is a great marketing tool for us to show as well what we're doing to the community. And in our region, we're some of the only types of experiences these students might have. So again, importance, activating them to feel important and activating to feel like they're actually doing something that's not just busy work. So continuing on, some of the other places that I really use students is truly as on-site marketers for tabling events, for different type of focus groups. We like to call them opinion parties, but different things like that where they can really be a part of what's going on. And so what we'll do is we'll go onto campus, and on most campuses there's a place that you can do this, whether you are an on-campus organization or even an off-campus organization, and we'll set up a table. Sometimes it's during larger tabling events. Sometimes it's just a Wednesday lunchtime that we've decided that we're gonna go out there. And we bring swag, we bring information about upcoming performances, we bring my students, we sometimes try to have student artists there or some type of making opportunity. A lot of times if we have a big show coming up, we'll even bring a computer out and a swiper and have students be able to buy tickets there. We pretty much bring Bardo Art Center to the students because on our campus, we are off to the side on campus. Number one reason students say they don't come to our building on a normal basis is because it's so far away from where they generally are on campus. So we found that us getting out onto campus is so useful, and this is a fantastic place to let your students really lead the charge. I sometimes come to these events, I might help them get set up for these events, but a lot of times I will leave and go get a Starbucks and do work near the event if they need me. But they're able to do this, and I mean, they're way better at talking to the students than I am. I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm 32, I'm not much older than these students. I don't look that much older than these students, so sometimes I can trick them, which is helpful, but they always kind of know once I start talking to them that I work here. And so it's nicer when it's that student-to-student connection, and use what you've got. I mean, I have theater students at my disposal. I have singers, I have artists. You should probably all have similar things at your disposal. So use them and have them have a good time. And so that's one way we'll get onto campus. We'll do those days. But even more importantly, that we've been doing a lot of, and I actually have an article about this up on the NAMP blog roll for the National Arts Marketing Project conference. So it was all about this thing we did last year called the Opinion Party, which I also talked a bit about in my last webinar with Americans for the Arts. And it's really just a new name for a focus group. But Opinion Party sounds like a lot more fun. It was something that I brought to my students, and I was like, am I crazy thinking that calling this an opinion party will actually do anything? And they were like, that just made all of us smile. So at least it does something. When you say focus group, I have no interest. So we started doing these opinion parties, and we really tried to make them feel like a party. We did them in a big open space. We had food, pizza, cookies. We kind of just talked and socialized for the first 30 minutes. And then I had my students help me come up with a series of kind of quick icebreaker questions, yes or no, and then questions that could lead to a much more open conversation. And by the end of those opinion parties, I'm generally sitting there while these students are having an amazing self-facilitated conversation that my students are keeping going the whole time. And again, the student-to-student connection is such a powerful thing. They are all the time being told what to do by their faculty members, by their staff members, by staff members that work in other departments on campus like me. We're trying to get things in their curriculum, making courses for them that they have to go. And that's all wonderful. But in the end of the day, that's not always the best way to create a long lasting impression for that student on the arts and make them a participant forever, to always be self-selecting arts experiences. But a lot of times when they have a more peer-to-peer connection and experience with those, it brings them into a new way. You know, we learned through those experiences that these students want interactive, way more interactive things than we could even think of. Most of these students hadn't been to an exhibition, hadn't been to a performance. And one of my students brought up the question, well, what if you got to see the vault and see all the stuff that was in our vault and in our permanent collection? And then I said, well, what about a behind the scenes tour of the theater? Every single student in that focus group, there's 25 of them, all were ecstatic that they didn't even know that was an opportunity. That would be so cool. But they hadn't even been to the exhibition or the performance. So again, the things that you learn from these students and that your student workers will help you pull out and learn from these students is amazingly beneficial and has been so useful for our organization. The other thing I would say is that have an opinion party just for your workers. They are probably some of the best people to give you focus group market research type questions. You can test things out on them. You can use them as your own little market research pool, because as these auxiliary staff, they have a little bit of the internal working understanding. They know the external working understanding, but they a lot of times provide some insight that you just haven't thought of because you're not that student and you're not thinking about the way that these students are processing this information. So again, use them like you'd use anybody else that is actually a full-time or a part-time staff member. And then also use them as the participants that you sometimes have a really hard time getting. They can be your participants for a lot of those things. The brand new interactive experience that you're piloting, have those students go through and have that experience. That is the same for your volunteers. You have older patrons who are ushers who come in and volunteer. Have them be a part of the organization. Make them feel like their opinion matters. You have new language that you're piloting. Send it out to them. Ask for their opinions. Whether or not you use it, make them always feel involved. That has always been, to me, the key, I felt, to having students that are then reaching out, or volunteers reaching out. Is there something else you need? What else could I be doing? Have you thought about maybe doing this the next time we go onto campus? It's just been a really fantastic opportunity for me to really have them expand the work we're doing and also teach me some things that I hadn't really thought of yet. So the last thing I want to say is that talk to them also about their actual position and the procedures and policies that you have in place or that you use as a center, and whether or not those are actually working for those students. So on top of all of the other things that Jarrell said at the beginning of this that are on my plate, this past December, we're in a staffing transition, and I also took on the management of our box office, which has been exceptionally fun during all of the cancellations and refunds. Fortunately, this was an extra comp situation, so I am not feeling too terrible about it. But the students were never really that efficient in the box office. They always felt like that they were undertrained or didn't have the information they needed. We have an awful ticketing system called New Line that's really for sports. Like when you load something into it, you have to load it as a game. Awful. But it's not the easiest place to work. And so I sat down and I talked to them, and I spoke to each specific individual student, which are there's 7 employees in the box office. So I spoke to them all individually, and then I spoke to them as a group. And what I learned is that they don't feel like they know enough about the system. They don't feel like that there's enough easy training manuals or things that they can kind of go and have a one-stop shop to know anything that they might need to know. They don't really know who actually has sometimes the true control over certain aspects, such as a ticket exchange. Certain students don't even have access to be able to do that, but they're not being trained to know that there should be a better process to be able to put that in instead of just writing a pink sticky note and putting it in the box office for hopefully the next person that comes in that can do that. And this is really to no fault of their own. There was a person in the position for the past year that really didn't know what they were doing. And when I spoke to the students, they said that the biggest thing that they felt that they really needed was a better way to communicate. And so this is not going to be a paid promotion for Microsoft Teams, but I do want to show it to you as a tool that for us has been essential, not only for the box office, but we now have it for a lot of other things that we're working on. But so Teams, if you have Microsoft, it's pretty much that one-stop shop. It's a place where you can leave posts and information for people, important stuff, such as important announcements regarding refunds when the students were still here. Anything that they needed to know, any of those files that they were looking for, they're all here. How-to manuals, guides, whatever it is. Any of our comp lists, anything like that, they're not in a binder anymore where they're being looked up. They just search for them and then they mark them off together in this drive, because it's not a normal shared drive. It is a shared drive kind of on steroids where everyone is together at really change the box office. Anything we need to know goes here. Important information, those ticket exchanges I was talking about. Any student can take down the information for a ticket exchange, but only certain people can do them. And so it's being a little slow right now, but as you can see, they put all that information down, and then someone can come back. Gabrielle, the student who has access to this, knows that when she comes into work, the first thing she does is check the ticket exchanges and see if there's anything she needs to do. So this now goes to really training the students, giving them a place where you can talk to them, communicate with them. This is our while we're at work communication platform, and then the GroupMe is our when we're not at work communication platform. And so in the same way that you would normally expect staff, if they were calling out for an hourly position, let's say, to maybe reach out to another staff member to see if they are available, we have our students do that through the GroupMe app. If they're not able to cover their hours, they'll send out an app that says, hey guys, I can't come. Anybody want to cover my 2 to 4 shift? And they try to cover their hours before we even have to deal with it. So these are the types of things we've done. This digitization of our communications, of our documents. You know, we did this well before the situation we're currently in right now, but I cannot tell you how happy I am that we took these steps, because we would have still been working off of lists that were printed on pieces of paper that really no one can access, as we've seen during certain types of situations, and shouldn't have to. It should be so much easier for everybody to be able to do their work if there's a standard location that they can go and find it. So again, this came out of my own desires and also the thoughts that the students gave me of what they would hope could happen to make their job more efficient and make them feel like they know a bit more of what they're actually doing when they're here, and they're not just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. So this was a great place, and this kind of takes me into the last thing I want to talk about before we move to any questions, is training these students. None of this has happened overnight. I didn't just send this out there and they all started doing exactly what I asked of them. This took time, but I would say it's probably the biggest return on the investment I have ever put into something. And that's from starting to do a customer service training with these students and really talking to them about what it means for them to be a frontline staff member and how much a different experience it is when somebody walks up and they genuinely greet them. It's the little tiny things that you have no idea what can do to these patrons. We know, but these students don't know. So teaching them the reasons why we do these things, not just asking them to do it. Those are the big differences, is giving them the reason why, not just giving them the task. And that, I think, is kind of the key to making anybody feel like they want to do their work, but even more so these students, a lot of times who are making minimum wage or doing this for free or just for class credit. So they have to feel like they want to be doing this work, or there's really no point to try and even have them on your team. And we carefully select the students that we work with. We don't just let any student that come in. I really tell them that this is what we're looking for. We want a student who wants to do this work. And then we get the students who are like the Karinas and the Rachels, who take things off my page that I needed to do or I could have never done and take us to a whole new level. And so this takes one-on-one training. That's super important and really helpful. But it also sometimes takes a one-stop shop. Now, I actually created this after my first year on campus because, as I mentioned, I work on behalf of an entire College of Fine and Performing Arts. And although I am not tasked with every single one of their performances and recitals to market, they are tasked with marketing those, and I am their advisor. And what I noticed is I was always getting the same questions over and over and over again, or I was sitting down to come up with a marketing plan for a recital that really could have just been the same event checklist for most everything. They could have gotten a lot of great traction for it on campus. So lo and behold, I made this marketing suggestions and guidelines, which people use. Always thought that it was going to be this thing that no one ever used, but I actually know people use it, which is very exciting. And so it has an actual checklist that they can download and they can use to market a specific event. But even more importantly, there's these drop downs for all the types of information I might have my students doing. So like social media, for example, talk about what you need in the different events, the different type of posts we want. Stories, if you go into here, this actually talks about like what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. It's going to go through all the things I'm going to talk to them about anyways, one-on-one, but it's going to have it in a place where if they forget it, they don't have to reach out to me to ask. They can just go here and they can find it. And I know that sounds a little selfish, but sometimes that little bit of time you have to answer the same question you've answered 5 times, you put it in a place where you can just direct somebody to, it makes your life a lot easier. And also then they don't always ask you those questions anymore. They start going here to this resource before they come back if they haven't found what they're looking for. So this is where I have this information. This is where, the community calendaring list, any flyering. So I have usual students who will do our posters and our flyers, but let's say they're not there that day and have another student come in. I can just have them go to this and find the key locations and even go to our distribution list, which show all of the places around campus. So again, this is time consuming. This definitely took, a few hours to put together, but the few hours this took to put together and the amount of kind of work that I've gotten off of it has been, like I said, there's no way you could ever convince me not to do this. And so these are the types of things we're trying to do even more of. And especially right now with everything going on, I've actually been talking about kind of updating this page to have some of that general language that we've been using across all of our marketing to make sure that our messaging is the same about what is going on with the current situation. So yeah, that is the very large nutshell of all of the ways that I have really found to engage these students. And as a takeaway list, this is kind of a lot of the things we just spoke about. Hopefully, some of these things will be new, things that you haven't yet tried, or a different approach to something you might have tried before. Sure, a lot of the things I spoke about are stuff that you've already been doing, but I truly hope that this was able to provide you with some new opportunities and some new ideas. Now, the other thing that I included on here that I mentioned earlier is our university is being pretty great. I don't know how many other universities are doing that, but they're really making it an effort to ensure that the students who are being paid for work on campus will still be paid for this work, even if they're not able to be there. They even have a special paid administrative leave that if the student can't complete any work remotely, they're still gonna pay them this money. But the goal is that they'll truly be working remotely, doing things that are either trainings or actual work, which there's some things I can have my students do when they're gone, but we wanted to come up with a list for our students of things that they can do that will be super helpful to us and helpful to them. So this is kind of this work at home training and opportunities. As you can see, the one thing I hope all of them do, because I desperately need to do it, is doing a review of our entire website to make sure that there's no errors, broken links, whatever might be going on. Some of that language is really old and totally should get an update. Code Academy, that is one of my favorite places to send students. It's great for any student, any person to know basic code, and Code Academy is a free place where you can just go and pretty much play games to learn how to write code. It's fun. I did it when I was in school, when I was learning website design, and honestly, even just going into like e-newsletters and stuff like that and being able to know how to tweak and make these changes is really great. And it's something that the students usually have a fun time with. And a lot of them learn it better than I do and then know how to do things even on a greater level. Customer service training. So this is a great link. Let's see if it's actually going to open for me. Yes, I do trust you. So this link is awesome. We use this already for our students and send it out to them. And it's pretty new. It was just put out in this last year. But what I love about this is not only does it give you kind of step-by-steps and good things that they can read, but as you keep going through, there are lists of services and support blogs and more things that they can read, like 10 top things not to say to angry customers was a really good one. There's also webinars on here and other exercises, trainings and different things. So pretty much this is a place where they can go, and at least as long as the opportunity is free, we're not asking them to pay for anything, and nor do we have budget to pay for anything. But as long as the opportunity is free, they're activated to go and do those and just send us, a bullet pointed list of their key takeaways. If there's a certification that they can get to show us that they did it. We do want to have, I don't want to be assignments, but know that they're actually doing these things and taking something away from it. And let me tell you, them making this bullet pointed list of key takeaways is just as much for me as it is for them, because I've not had the ability to go through all of those, but they probably will. Accessibility for us is a really big thing, as it is, I'm sure, for everybody. So these accessibility webinars from respectability.org are really great. They have a large variety of different things: Disability 101, the history, how to ensure accessible events. And again, these are all in webinar form. So this is another place where we're having our students go to learn more about how we can be better ADA compliant and how we can really reach to more people across campus, because we have a lot of students that really could benefit from some of our spaces getting much more ADA compliant than they are, our language, the text that we're using on posters, all sorts of things. And so those students can really help us ensure that we're doing all those things in the way that we should. It's something we're working on all the time, but as you know, that stuff is always changing and evolving. And the more you can be up to date and make sure you're being inclusive for everybody is amazingly important. And your students can really help you do that. And there's some other things, you know, having helped me create content, find fun, shareable things that we can put out there, which is going to be more important than ever right now. And also something that I'm going to have them all do is I want some new unique swag items. I am sick of the same old swag, and I know they're going to come up with some good ideas. And so that's something I'm activating them on as well. But that is about it. I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for questions, and make sure also that you know that we're going to put this up afterwards, this whole list. So if you weren't able to write this stuff down, don't worry, it will be up there. And I'm also going to provide Jarrell with a lot of the links to a lot of the public places that I was taking you to, just so any of the things you talked about, you're able to go back and really learn about it at a future date. So yeah, that's it. And I'm sure there are some questions. So I'm going to turn this over to Jarrell.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill. Let's start with some questions. I think one person found it, but they had asked what your Insta handle was.
At Bardo Art Center. That would have been helpful to tell you, wouldn't it? So
I'll put it in the chat.
Thanks.
It's just Bardo Art Center,
Here.
one word.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Yeah, not a problem.
Another question. What apps other than Canva do you recommend to generate content creativity?
So Canva is kind of our number one. We love Canva. Another one is Fonto. Fonto is really cool because it's an app on your phone, and it pretty much turns your phone into a little Photoshop where you can put text on an image, you can change it, you can do filters, you can do fun stuff. You could, you know, emboss it to make it look really cool. So that's a great one because most of my students don't have Photoshop or something like that. Another thing that we use a lot if we can't find content is I have, and I'll put this list up there. I realize it's not up there on that website and it should be, but the places where you can go and find content when you don't have it that you will not get copyright infringement for. And so that's websites like pixabay.com. You know, we were doing this really big environmental exhibition and a lot of the artwork was in process and not ready, and we wanted to start marketing for it. And so I just had the students go there and find me the most striking images they could that were just all completely free, public domain, no attribution shots. You don't even have to link it back. But if we could find their Instagram handle, we would actually link that photo back to that person, because I feel like you always should if you can. But those are some of the things that we use to create more content. But I'd say for stories, like those really engaging stories, our favorite has definitely been Canva. And it's nice because you can make an account and share things with each other. So like my student has that account and she was working on it, but then I can just go in instead of needing to reach to her to ask her to make the edits. If it's something quick and I need to use it, I can just go in and change it and then download it and use it when I need it. So those are some of the other things that we're using to get that content when we might not have it.
Great. And can you spell, is it Fonto, like P-H-A-O?
So yeah, so it's Fonto, I believe. I'm going to double check that while we're talking to make sure I have that correct. But I believe it's just Fonto. Yep, exactly like that. And then another app that I'm going to put out there that you may have or you might not have on your campus, but is an app. This is not Quark. It's just not letting me spell it. Quark. So Quark with a Q. This is tied to a system called Campus Labs. For us, we call it the WCU Engage system. And what this is our new event platform on campus. But a lot of campus, and what's really cool about Engage is that not only does it work like any other event submission, so I can have a student be an admin on my account and go and help me submit the events just like they would on a community calendar, but this actually connects to an app called Quark, which is on your phone, and you just type in the name of your university. You don't even have to sign in, and it pulls any events that are up here onto the student's cell phone so they can find them. So we've been using that a lot because it's pretty much like a one-stop shop for these students to be able to go and find all the events that are going on campus. It's also helpful for my students when we're desperately looking for content and they go up there and they notice that some department is doing a Bob Ross painting style thing, and then we can share that because we knew it was going on and it's somehow thematic content to our channel, even though it's not ours. So those are some of the other things we use, but I would check to see if your university has a Quark because it's pretty awesome and it's new for us. So we'll learn more how the students are actually engaging with it.
Great, thank you. Um, I have a couple of questions. So you had mentioned how much using Microsoft Teams really helps the students that you work with in the box office.
Mhm.
I did just want to have a clarifier that Microsoft Teams is a part of the Office 365 portal. But if they don't have Outlook at their university or at their organization or institution, do you have any other productivity tools that can be centralizing hubs for information?
Yeah, so I think that one of the best ones, I'm not too familiar with it, I'm learning more, is Google Hangout, which I think you can do some similar type things that you can do in here. It might not be as robust, especially if you're not paying for it, but I do believe there is still a way to make, you know, a drive within your Google Drive that has everybody shared on it. So anytime you put something up on there, they're gonna find that. In there, you could have the comment section and stuff like that. You could also just have a document where everybody leaves messages to each other in real time. So I think that there are some ways to work around it. Google is obviously a fantastic tool to be able to do that. But I would say those are the ones, and hopefully at your university, what we have discovered is a lot of times they have things that they're not telling you about. So we were just about to purchase our own Zoom webinar license until we learned that they had an extra license that was just floating around and not in use. And so make sure to ask sometimes. You might have this. It just might have never been loaded onto the back end. And when you click on this, it doesn't show up for some reason. But you just have to like add it in the app section, but you've always had it. So that's for us. We've always had Teams and nobody knew about it for the longest time. And so I would make sure you talk to your IT team, you find out what tools might be available to you if you don't have them. And then if not, I think Google Hangouts and Google Drive is probably the best backup you can have because it also has the instant messaging chat function, which is something as well that can be really useful. And actually that app that I mentioned before where we do our offsite communication, GroupMe, is complete. And in that you can make different groups for different people. Like I have my alt staff group, just my box office manager, just my box office people, just the people who work in the gift shop. So we have those different groups to be able to talk to people just at a drop of a hat whenever we need to.
Perfect. And I'm just typing in,
GroupMe, yep.
yeah, GroupMe, Google Hangouts. I would also suggest like Slack too is a really good
Oh,
one.
that's a good one, yes. Yeah.
And maybe
And
even Airtable.
Airtable, and then another thing that's through the 365 platform that we're just learning about too is something called Planner, which is supposed to be more like a project management system that interfaces with the Teams folder. So you'd have your Teams folder, but then you can use it to actually assign tasks through a project management system. So we're looking into that as well. But again, I know Slack, I think, has some free options available for so many users as well. So that's definitely a great suggestion.
Everyone's going to be so productive. I can feel it.
We have lots of tech. So
Yes.
I think all of us marketers probably have been turned to more than ever because I'm sure not only all of us are handling the communications and doing the marketing, but we just so happen to be the people who understand virtual platforms. And so, yeah, I'm sure everyone is very busy, but hopefully this can make you more productive and efficient in that process.
That's awesome. And I think I have more questions. Feel free to definitely type your questions in the chat box or unmute yourself by tapping the microphone icon at the bottom of your of the meeting window. Great, got some thank yous in the chat box to Jill because you're so amazing answering the questions. I have one more question and then we can close out. But I think you kind of mentioned this before when you were mentioning your student worker who identified as a marketing assistant when sending those emails. I wonder what you feel, what processes you've gone through when maybe updating the job description for that position, when really thinking about the difference between the student worker, right, and then a marketing assistant, something that's more seen as something that has more of a responsibility or more of a role in the day-to-day function of the job. So I wonder if you had any advice for maybe updating a job description or modifying those responsibilities.
Yeah, I would say actually that most of my students that have that title, marketing assistant, they might work in some other places. Like Karina will fill in at the box office and will fill in at the FAM shop. She's cross-trained. We cross-train all of our students to make it a lot easier to fill them in places. But those students, when they look for that job on our job cat, we're the catamount, so everything's a cat. But so JobCat system, if you go to there and you look for a position at Bardo Art Center, you're going to see positions that say marketing assistant and that have all the types of things you're going to do as the marketing assistant. You're going to see one that says graphic designer, and it's going to be the specific types of things that we give to a student graphic designer. Then if we have students that only want to work in one place, like students that just want to work in the box office, they'll have, box office staff member or box office employee, box office assistant, box office coordinator, depending upon the different kind of levels that they are. And through those, they have their standard box office description, but there is always something that says additional duties as assigned when necessary. Here are some examples. And we'll go through this list of this type of thing that really is just them being a marketing assistant. And usually for those students, I don't usually have them doing a lot of the reaching and stuff and things like that. I usually keep that to those students who've really been hired as those marketing assistants. But for a perfect example, one of my new employees, Steven, is a communications major, and he applied for the box office assistant position because that's what we had. He came on, I learned he was a communications major, and you can best believe he's already been doing a lot more stuff than what was on the box office, and he wants to, because unless they have work to do, sometimes if we're in between shows, sitting at the box office or sitting at the gift shop on a dull day can be very boring. And so they like to have things that they can do. And there are definitely times where I'm surprised when I'm getting reached out to because my students are asking me for work and I might not even have something for them at that moment. And that's when I come back to thinking, okay, what was that thing I didn't yet to do? Ooh, I didn't yet reach out to the engineering department, and that would be a great connection. Karina, go. So that's how I do it, but I make sure in their job descriptions, they're not being hired as a student worker or this or that. And even our interns, like I have an intern right now, she's a video production intern. That's what she's doing. And so she's been going in and filming stuff and creating all sorts of really incredible videos for us, which thank goodness she got a lot of content before this left, and she's still working right now on creating that content for us that we can then put up online. So those are some of the things to like really make it clear. Just make it the title, put it in there, lay it out for them. And I mean, these job descriptions are a page, and for the coordinator, a page and a half. We try to be really clear and put it all out there for them so nothing comes as a surprise, and they know what to expect when they're working for us.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Jill, for joining us and facilitating us today. Just a reminder that this event will be recorded or is recorded and will be available for replay in 24 to 48 hours. Everyone who registered will receive an email when the recording is ready. So please visit us at artsu.americansforthearts.org for other training opportunities and resources. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.